We now call the meeting to order. If the clerk would please do the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Clear.
Here.
Council members Emerson.
Here.
Lesser.
Here.
Commissioners Rapond.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
And Mays.
Here.
Before we proceed to the action items, I have Mr. Matt Pavarnik that has requested to address the body for just a second.
Thank you.
He says this is the only time he will do so tonight. We'll hold him
Yes,
to that.
unless you ask me to the podium, which I'd be happy to come up. Thank you. Well, it's the end of, we're coming into the end of 2019. It's been a big year, and I just wanted to stand up and let you know a couple things. First of all, I want to publicly thank the staff for Go Topeka and really the entire Greater Topeka Partnership. I'm going to call out tonight Molly, Barbara, Glenda, Katrin, Freddie, Natalie, Rhiannon, Rhett, and their entire support team. And so they're incredible, they're amazing. I think you'll see a lot of the results of how amazing they are tonight. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank our community and our private sector leaders, our board members, and how much time that they put into what we work on. It's the philanthropy of both dollars and time is incredible. And then lastly, I just want to thank you at the end of this year for your leadership, our elected leaders and our elected officials. It's incredible the partnership that we have. And as we know, we are not competing with ourselves in this community, we're competing with the rest of the world. And it means so much. And so as we go into 2020, I want to tell you that we have a lot of new strategies to undertake in the future. You hear us talk a lot about this community has momentum. I know you believe that, and you will hear us talking a lot in the new year about acceleration. So we are going to continue our momentum, but we're going to accelerate. And so I want to let you know that we're not resting on our laurels. We're having a lot of success. We're not on a roll. We are experiencing success because we've implemented some really good strategy, and so just look for us in 2020 to accelerate. So with that, I'll let you get back to the action items, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the action items. Item A, if the clerk would read.
A is approval of September 11, 2019 JEDO board meeting minutes.
We have received the minutes in our packet. We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Mays. We have a second by the Deputy Mayor. Any comments or questions on this item? Are we going to use the... Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is approval of Project K incentive agreement.
Ms. Stapleton.
Good evening. At the September 11th JEDO meeting, the approval of funding occurred for Project K, an animal health manufacturing company with a total capital investment of $1.1 million, in addition to up to 4 new jobs over the next 5 years that have an average wage of $52,000 annually, plus benefits. The investment is expected to produce up to $17.7 million in economic impact to Shawnee County in the next 10 years. The approved incentive, based upon the capital investment and new jobs, plus training incentives, totals $25,000. All incentives approved are performance-based, to be paid out as earned. And with your approval of the contract agreement in your packet this evening, I'm excited to announce that Project K is Bimini Pet Health. I'd also like to invite Sam Almirani, Chief Executive Officer, to address and share comments related to the project and their growth and success in our community. Sam?
Thanks, Barbara, and I'd like to thank every member of the board here today for approving our funding. This is actually a homegrown company that went from a figment of my imagination to the basement to now something bigger, and I hope that it continues to grow, and we're certainly working on it. We just recently acquired the building that we were renting, and we're renovating it. We're adding some warehouse space, some additional equipment. We started hiring employees, and we're going to hire hopefully a couple more in the next year. So all systems go, and just keep your fingers crossed for us, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments for our presenters? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the body?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Cook. We have a second by Councilman Emerson. Additional discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you for your loyalty
Thank you.
to our community.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We now move on to item C.
And as is customary,
Oh,
we need to break
we
to
are going
celebrate
to have a small recess.
Bimini Pet Health. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll have a small recess and we'll re-engage in the meeting very promptly. Crutches prowess this evening. We now move on to item C, if the clerk would read.
C is approval of Project Oyster funding in the amount of $96,000.
Ms. Woodford.
Good evening again. So we just keep rolling here with business retention and expansion within the community. Project Oyster is an existing manufacturing company also looking to expand in our community. They'll be investing $3.5 million in additions and improvements and expenditures. Over the next 5 years, they'll also be adding up to 17 new jobs with an average wage of $43,000 annually plus benefits. This investment is expected to produce up to $69 million in economic impact to Shawnee County in the next 10 years. We're proposing up to $96,000 in incentives, and all incentives, as always, are performance-based to be paid out as earned. With your approval of the funding this evening, the details of the agreement will be outlined via formal contract and presented for your approval at a future meeting.
Do we have any questions for Mrs. Stapleton? Seeing no questions, what is the pleasure of the body?
I'll second.
Motion to approve by Councilman Emerson, second by Commissioner Ribbon. Additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
We now move on to item D of the agenda, if the clerk would read.
D is approval of incentive funding for Project Emerald in the amount of $1,222,000.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. So I'm excited that we were able to get this item on the agenda for this evening, and excited to be presenting my first project to you all, so thank you. We're seeking incentive funding approval for Project Emerald this evening, and I first started pursuing Project Emerald in May of this year. In June, Go Topeka hosted our first site visit with the company, followed by our second site visit taking place in October. So with that being said, I'm sure you can tell that this project has been moving quickly, which is very exciting for us. To provide you with an overview for the project, Emerald is a new business seeking to build an 85,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility. It's a meat processing and distribution facility. This project would come with 150 new jobs with an average annual wage of $45,000 a year plus benefits. So Emerald would have a capital investment of $68 million and will need up to 45 acres of development-ready land for their facility. Should Emerald select Topeka and Shawnee County as their desired location for development, this project will have an $884 million economic impact over the next 10 years. The incentives we're recommending tonight are within the approved incentive guidelines, and as always, are going to be performance-based. So we are recommending free land totaling up to 45 acres in Central Crossing Commerce Park, a training grant of $1,000 per employee equaling $150,000, an employment investment of $4,500 per employee equaling $675,000. Capital investment incentive of $2,000 per million on equipment and $5,000 per million on real property, equaling $237,000. So an infrastructure incentive not to exceed $160,000 is being recommended as well. This figure represents a 50% match of the cost that Project Emerald will incur to bring the current site they're looking at up to shovel-ready. So it's important here to note that when we sold Project Arrow's land, which was FedEx, to them, it was made clear that the $180,000 proceeds from that sale would go towards utility extensions in the Commerce Park. So that's where this $160,000 incentive would come from. So this brings the total incentive package to $1,222,000. So at the start of this project, it was stated that Emerald was looking at 6 different states. So I'm happy to say that although Emerald has not yet selected a final location, we've been made aware that it is down to us and one other community. So this is very exciting. I'd like to take a moment to thank the members of the city staff that were there to support us through every step of, each meeting that we had. I think that one thing we learn in site selection is that they're really looking for communities that are united force, and that really kind of helped tell that story that we have that here, which is rare. So we're hopeful to hear a decision sometime within the next month, I think, which is great. So I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Emerson.
Sorry.
Commissioner Cook?
Go ahead, Commissioner Cook.
Thank you. One of the things that we've looked for in the commerce parks is consistent use or uses that are like use. Will this be a like use with what we have, and will it coexist well with what the other companies that we have in the commerce park?
Yes, definitely. I think that's what made our site and our location attractive to them, was similar businesses of food processing and distribution using the same roadways, and telling them that this was a great spot as far as the location goes and the infrastructure that's put in place. So I think it flows very well with the rest of the businesses.
Okay. I think that's important that we do have that like use with the companies that we have, so that, we are able to keep the businesses that we have with other businesses. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I apologize if I overlooked this. So one incentive is 45 acres of free land. What does that equate to in dollars?
Yeah, so that will be based upon the capital investment that they're going to be putting into the land. Right now, the land is owned by Go Topeka. It's within the Commerce Park. So I know that we have the land there. So it'll depend on the capital investment. I think right now they're looking at $68 million based on what they're going to put into equipment and into the building. So that will
What
increase.
is the actual 45 acres, if we were to sell it to Ms. Ortiz, how much would it be worth? What's the price?
The most recent example that you could look at would be the example that Rhiannon referenced earlier with the sale of land to FedEx, and that land sale was at $10,000 an acre.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Cook kind of asked the same question I was wondering. I know sometimes when people hear meat processing, they think, we're going to have a feedlot with thousands of cattle, and I understand you guys are very guarded with information you're allowed to give, but I guess could you just clarify that?
Yes, so we can clarify that this is a non-slaughter operation. So it'll be processing and distribution. They're packaging and distributing a final packaged product, so non-slaughtering.
Thank you. Nice work on your first one.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by Deputy Mayor Clear. We have a second by Councilman Emerson. Additional discussion on this item. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
We now move on to item E. If the clerk would read,
E is approval of Project Lightning Incentive Agreement.
Ms. Howie.
Okay, well, this is a day we've been waiting for quite some time. I was talking with the company out in the lobby earlier, and I think we're coming up on about a year and a half since we've had the first site visit with this company. And I know, like most projects, they've had an exhaustive site selection process, and we're here tonight to announce that the company has selected a site in Conza Fire Commerce Park in Topeka, Kansas, to locate their new facility. But I will remind you of the specs, even though most of you probably have these memorized by now. We're looking at 1.8 million square feet for this distribution center, a capital investment of $200 million, 300 new jobs, and we will be refining the wage numbers. Right now, the wage study was done a couple of years ago, and it'll be a while before the facility's up and running. So I've been told by the company that they will refine this amount, but right now what's in your contract is an average wage of $34,070 to be specific. So let's look at the specs again. We are looking at 236 acres in Conza Fire to be provided at no cost to the company, a training grant of $150,000, employment incentives in the amount of $900,000. We also have a broker commission that is separate from the incentive contract. I just want you all to know that's part of the package. an investment incentive of $300,000, infrastructure incentive of up to $100,000, for a total cash incentive that's been approved by this body of $1.45 million. So with those specs in mind, we have an economic impact over 10 years of $631 million, and that represents a 74% return on your incentive investment for the Topeka and Shawnee County community. And I would answer any questions, but I'm also excited to announce the company to you and invite them to the podium. So if there's no other questions, I'd like to invite Ryan Ersick, Public Affairs and Governmental Relations for Walmart.
Thank you, Molly. Appreciate
Thank you.
At Walmart, we usually don't get those on a store siding or distribution siding, so this is great. Thank you guys so much. Good evening, members of the board. Delighted to be here tonight, excited to be here. Thank you guys so much for your time. My name is Ryan Ersick, and I am the Walmart Public Affairs and Government Relations Director for the state of Kansas. We at Walmart are committed to the state of Kansas and its prosperity. Our company employs more than 20,000 Kansans and operates more than 80 stores and 3 distribution centers here in the state of Kansas. In fiscal year ending 2019, Walmart collected on behalf of the state of Kansas more than $378.5 million in sales tax. For that same fiscal year, we paid more than $70.7 million in state and local taxes, which went to support schools, police, firefighters, and other important services critical to local communities. We spent $699.5 million for merchandise and services with over 640 suppliers in the state of Kansas alone. As a result of Walmart's relationship with these suppliers, Walmart supports 56,953 supplier jobs here in the state. Walmart stores, Sam's Club, our distribution centers here in the state, and the Walmart Foundation gave more than $8.3 million in cash and in-kind donations to local organizations in communities that we serve here in the state. Earlier this year, Walmart also announced that we would spend an estimated $49.7 million by the end of the year in Kansas through the remodeling of 10 stores, as well as the launch and continued expansion of several customer-focused innovations. I outline our dedication to Kansas because while our headquarters might be in Bentonville, Arkansas, Kansas is also a home to us. We cut our teeth on some of our first stores in Kansas. Store 39 in Fort Scott, that's where I got my start, junior in high school, pushing carts, working in the electronics division. Store 72, Pittsburgh, Kansas. Sam Walton often visited the state, not only to hunt, but also ended up recruiting one of our CEOs, Lee Scott from Baxter Springs, Kansas. And that's why we're here today. We all know that Kansas has the logistical advantage of being centrally located, and as a hub of accessibility, it takes less than 3 days to reach anywhere in the continental U.S. But it's the skilled workforce and the Kansas can-do attitude that is the reason our company continues to invest in the state. As Molly mentioned, this is a 1.8 million square foot logistics facility and represents an investment of $200 million and will create 300 new permanent jobs. This Topeka facility is an important investment that will help us better serve our customers, not only in the Midwest, but beyond, while creating a positive and local economic impact in a state that is already very important to our business. We're really excited about this facility, and we look forward to sharing more details on this project in the coming weeks and months. Again, thank you guys so much for your time. I know this is long overdue, so thank you guys for being patient, Molly and the team at Go Topeka. We're completely indebted to them for all of the hard work and fishing and putting up with all of us throughout probably the 2-year process on this. So again, I will stand for any questions, but do just want to leave with saying a big thank you to this board and to Go Topeka. Thank you.
Well, I would say thank you to the corporation. There's a lot to be said for a corporation that has been looking for ways to continue engaging with their employees, to understand better the needs of their consumers, and to really consider the partnership that you guys have with this community. And for choosing Topeka, we just want to say thank you. Commissioner Cook.
Can you tell us a little bit about your timeline and what you're looking at as far as when we can expect employees to start showing up at your facility?
Yeah, this is a multi-year process, and so I don't have any of those dates yet, but as soon as we do, we'll be sharing there. I know that we have a whole host of an entitlement process, and as we work through that, we will start sharing more and more of those details, but we don't have any of those yet.
And will Walmart have a commitment to hiring local construction and workers to build the facility?
Well, again, this is a multi-year process. We haven't even talked about the, contractors or who's pouring concrete. I wish I owned a concrete business right now. But no, I do not know where the contractors will come from at this point.
Okay.
Additional comments or questions from the team? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. Do you know, is it going to be just like the market store or just a big superstore?
No, ma'am, this is a distribution center.
Oh, the distribution center.
As I mentioned, we have 3 distribution centers here in the state, not quite as big as this one, so probably, everybody's kind of familiar with our distribution center in Ottawa, Kansas, and that's about 1.3 million square feet, so it'll be like that. Mm-hmm.
Additional comments or questions from this team? That being said, Commissioner Mays.
Do I need to move to approve?
Oh, yes. Commissioner Mays moves approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rippon. Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Welcome
very
to our
much.
community.
Thank you.
We will now have a small recess and go out for a picture. Photo op, photo op, photo op.
You do whatever you need to do.
As long as this desk has been here.
All right. We will reconvene the meeting. We still have the Project Lightning celebratory slide up there. Trying to figure out if our staff back there is. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So to our friends from Mars that are watching this evening, I want to say good evening. I was told by a little birdie that our friends from corporate and Mars are watching us tonight. Pavarnik says hi, our whole team says hi, so we're just waving to you and wishing that you were here. Which brings us to the next item. Item G, if the clerk would read.
Approval of reallocation of Mars incentive funds originally allocated for construction of a firehouse and authorizing JEDO Chair to execute amendment to original agreement dated July 27, 2011.
Ms. Howie.
Good evening. So I'm not Brett Spangler. Brett is at a site director's meeting and was not able to attend. So as you have seen his presentation in May, I will have those slides before you and kind of hit a couple of highlighted talking points that he sent along with me. And Mars's legal counsel is in the audience as well if you have questions. Okay. So tonight I'm here to remind you of the previous presentation by Brett Spangler, and he just wanted to pass along that he really does appreciate the patience of everyone and the thoroughness of this body in being very thoughtful with how to direct these funds, and they will take that seriously if this vote is approved when they continue conversations about how to reinvest these dollars into our community. You know, Mars has 5 core principles, and I think the one that's demonstrated most with this agreement is mutuality. So the things that Mars has talked about reinvesting this money on would have benefit to more than just their company and the community. And I think that was very intentional. So that's something that I've heard Brett mention over and over. They don't want this to be something that is just a benefit to Mars. And so that's something that I think shouldn't be lost on us as a community. A reminder here just to show you that what they had planned to invest in our community as far as capital investment and number of jobs, they have exceeded, and in the past 7 years have met their commitment and over and above, and I am selfishly hoping that we grow at the same rate for the next 7 years. Here's some of the brands that are produced here in Topeka. Remember, this is the only place where you can get caramel M&Ms. Okay, so here's the meat of the request, and this is similar to what you all saw in May, but I will hit a couple of highlights and a few changes that Brett has noted based on the feedback from this body. So Mars is asking for approval to reallocate the funds originally intended for the fire station and Consa Fire Park improvements. The team is proposing an allocation of this money to be distributed between the following areas, and if this body were to approve the reallocation, like I said, that Mars hopes to have conversations with relevant partners in this list as soon as possible. So Consa Fire Future Development is still on the list of things that Mars plans to reinvest this money into. You know, they understand that to be a good corporate partner, they need to maintain the park and be a good neighbor to Walmart. So they'll make sure that that park is kept nice, and that any future investments, there will be some money set aside for that. Also, what's very important to Mars, along with all of our other existing employers, is workforce development. So conversations around STEM training and how to infuse more programs into secondary and post-secondary educational institutions is top of mind to Mars. Also, quality of life investments for their associates, such as downtown development, the SOTA Ride to Work program, and Momentum 2022. I'm going to be a little candid here. The SOTA Ride to Work program is probably something that maybe surprises some of you. So that's one of the tweaks to this message since May, based on feedback from the community and this body. Mars would be supportive if this funding is approved to dedicate some of those funds to that program. And I would stand for any questions, if there are any that I can answer for the company. If not, then Lucky is here as well.
I know that we had ample discussion last time. We did a lot of due diligence in order for us to arrive here today. So are there any comments or questions? We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second in Councilman Padilla?
No.
No? We have a second in Councilman Emerson. Now discussion, Councilman Padilla?
It's just a comment. I'm glad to hear the mention of SOTO on the program, because I really think it's an important program, and it really has served to get a lot of employees out to where those jobs are. And I'm glad that they're willing to help the city continue that program and with the transit company. So thank you very much.
Mike, your mic.
Anyway, what I said.
I'll pass along your comments.
Thank you.
Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mayor. Molly, I'm just, I'm glad to get this money off the sidelines and, start to work in our community. So I'm excited, and Mars has been such a fantastic partner to our community, so I'm glad to support this.
Wonderful. Seeing no additional comments, we have somebody signed up to speak. Ms. Carl Marple, are you here this evening? Oh, there you are. It's a full room.
Thank you. My name is Carol Marple. I didn't write anything down, so I'm going to have to wing this. This has bothered me since the May meeting. I was here, I was in the audience, and I think that Mr. Spangler and Mars deserve an apology. To be quite frank, I was very ashamed of some of our JEDO members that night. Mr. Spangler's in charge of Mars. I can't begin to know how many people he has working for him. It is a multi-million-dollar building, facility, and the way he was treated that night, his word that he was secure with the fire situation, the fire safety, the response time, and everything that was done by the different fire departments, in my opinion, should have been enough. But I do not think he was treated very well, and as I said, I was ashamed as a person sitting in the audience. I am very glad that this money will be reallocated. I like what Mr. Spangler and Mars has proposed to do. But I would also suggest that perhaps they forget the downtown redevelopment. We seem to have a lot of money going there. And perhaps that they think about their neighbors to the north, Montera. Let's do some things there. That is a place where a lot of people could live and work very conveniently to Mars, but it needs some attention. It has long been forgotten by the county, and I think things need to change there. But as I said, I just wanted to come up as a person in the audience, a member of the public, to say to Mr. Spangler, I apologize for the behavior of some of the members here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. There's no other questions. We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to echo what Ms. Marple said. I too wasn't here. I was sitting at home watching this in total disbelief. I shared your same feelings, and I would like to apologize to Mars for the delay. I'd like to thank you for what you do for the community and for M&Ms.
And all his people said caramel. All right, we now move on to item H, if the clerk would read.
G is approval to provide liquidated damages reimbursement in the amount of $12,045 to HTK Architects.
So you thought that we'd completed the East Topeka Learning Center project in Washburn Tech East. And we have, but there's a few things to finally wrap up with that. As part of the settlement agreement with the bond company, you remember when we kind of had the delay for a bit, from the original contractor on the Washburn Tech East project, the bond company paid additional funds for contractual, a partial percentage of liquidated damages on the project. Those funds were deposited in Shawnee County's account for the project, and Washburn Tech and HTK Architects were asked by the county councilor to document their liquidated damages due to the delay of the completion. Washburn Tech's damages were reimbursed in May. You authorized that at that time. Now that this project is complete, on November 1st, the Go Topeka Board Executive Committee did vote to make a recommendation to JEDO to authorize the transfer of funds from the project account to HTK Architects to make them whole, and from Go Topeka's contingency account on the project as reimbursement for their liquidated damages. We're seeking that request for approval to provide those liquidated damages, the reimbursement in the amount of $12,045 to HTK Architects this evening. And I'll stand for questions.
Any questions? Yes, Councilman Lesser.
I'm having a hard time understanding what liquidated damages were for HTK.
The extension of the project, and it should be in your packet as well in terms of what they submitted. I apologize, I don't have the page number off the top of my head. But there were several things related to that. They had to schedule and coordinate different meetings. There were still changes that occurred on the project that basically extended their time an additional, 6 months almost, if you will. And so, and that was not HTK or Go Topeka that indicated, hey, we need to know what these are. That was the county councilor reaching out both to Washburn Tech as they needed to begin classes in January, and to HTK to say, hey, what are those additional costs that have been incurred because of the delay due to this project? We actually did that submission to the bond company, to the Hartford, to find out what those cost differentials were. If I remember correctly, and I know Councilor Crowell is in the room, I remember we had a conversation that we didn't necessarily agree with what the bond company was going to pay for liquidated damages. It was close, and we needed to continue to move on the project. So it was not entirely the full amount that we submitted to them, but it was relatively good, and we didn't want to further delay the project another however many months while we were haggling with the bond company.
Additional questions for Ms. Stapleton? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the body?
Madam Mayor, motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Cook. We have a second by the Deputy Mayor. Additional comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
We now move on to item H of the agenda, if the clerk would read.
H is approval of JEDO contract agreement for services with Go Topeka.
Mr.
Good
Ward.
evening, I'm Keith Ward, I'm Chair-elect with GTP. What a great night. It's a great night to be a part of this community, and it's very exciting what's happening within our community. We're currently requesting an extension of the Go Topeka agreement, and I think you have it before you. There's really 2 points that are significantly being modified. The first sets a term of 3 years beginning January 1st, 2020. The second modification really indicates that on January 1st of each subsequent year, it will automatically renew for an additional 3-year period. Those are really the substantive modifications. I think it's important to note that there's a termination clause within the agreement with a 180-day notice that the agreement can be terminated at any time. We really think this is an important extension, an important modification to the agreement. Really, in a word, it creates consistency. It gives the existing staff confidence in the future of their careers. It projects stability and allows us to attract new talent to GTP and to Go Topeka. It promotes consistency in our relationships with those new prospects that we're always working on all the time and the existing businesses within our community. It's continuity of brand, too. Go Topeka is known from coast to coast with site consultants right now. And so continuing the agreement makes a lot of sense. And then finally, it's a strong statement to companies outside our community that we have confidence in the economic development organization in our community. So we recommend that you approve it. I'd stand for any questions, and Jeff Leithorn's here and can answer any of the legal questions.
Questions from the body? Seeing no questions, what is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by the Deputy Mayor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mays. Additional comments or questions for Mr. Warder? Seeing none? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. We now move on to item I, if the clerk would read. Oh, there were 2 individuals signed up for public comment. Mr. Foltz, would you still like to speak? You would pass? And then Mr. Kuda, would you like to speak? Nope, all right. Thank you for your grace. We now move on to item I, if the clerk would read.
I is approval of 2020 Go Topeka Public Budget and Business Plan.
Good evening. Okay. So I think I've had the chance to meet most of you, but if I've not met you, my name is Natalie Zeller. I am the Senior Vice President of Finance for Go Topeka. And tonight I have the 2020 Go Topeka Public Budget and Business Plan before you. So first I want to cover some housekeeping items with the budget, and then I will kick it over to Molly, and Molly will walk through the program details with you. And then I will wrap up with some information on the general and administrative and the special initiatives column. So first, the housekeeping items. In the past few years, in the September JEDO meeting, we've brought before you a draft budget for review. We have a couple big changes happen this year that's pushed that timeline back. So our timeline starts in October, where we were able to bring the budget before the Go Topeka board meeting for the first view of the draft budget. Then throughout the month of November, we invited each of you to meet with us to go over in detail the budget and get your feedback and your input. Thank you for those of you who took us up on that opportunity. We value those, and we take your feedback and your input into account, and we have in the final version that you have before you. If you met with us in early November, you might notice that some of those numbers have wiggled a little bit from our meetings. The 2 changes I mentioned, the first one is the new format. So in years past, we have provided the programs down the left side of your budget worksheet in a total number, and then the narrative accompanied the budget that outlined the details of what was made up within those numbers. So this year on the budget worksheet, you'll notice that down the side you have the natural accounts, which we have adopted the unified not-for-profit chart of accounts. And so it gives all of the detail within each program, which has been shifted across the top. Therefore, the narrative that you have before you is more focused on the strategic focus areas within the 2020 budget, as opposed to outlining the numbers that you have in the spreadsheet already. The second major change we have is we've moved from modified cash basis reporting to accrual basis reporting. Prior to 2020 year, we produced our monthly financial statements on a modified cash, and then at the end of the year would go through a process to convert that to accrual basis for our audit. Going forward, we will be producing our monthly financial statements on a full accrual basis. Therefore, we have produced this budget on a full accrual basis. The impact to the budget is fairly minimal with the change from modified cash to accrual. The largest impact that you'll notice on a year-over-year basis is the revenue line item. Historically, we've showed the $5 million of revenue in our budget as revenue, but going forward on a full accrual basis, the revenue will only be recognized when the funds are expended. So that number may be higher than $5 million in some years or lower, depending upon the budget of expenses that you have before you. So I mentioned we have quite a few changes going on in the budget. So on the budget worksheet, you'll notice that the numbers represented are only the 2020 budget year. So what we've done to provide that comparability for year-over-year purposes is we have converted this spreadsheet before you, which is also in your packet, that will give you that comparability between 2020 and 2019 so that you can compare it to what was approved as last year's budget. So I'll kick it over to Molly and let Molly walk through the details of what's in each one of these programs, and then I'll come back and give you some information on GNA.
Thanks, Natalie, and thank you to many of you around this table that spent hours with us going through the details of what makes up the numbers in this worksheet. I'm going to hit the highlights, and then the whole team is here for questions, so bear with me here as we walk through. Following along, go from left to right. We're going to start with the first column. You'll notice business attraction and retention is lumped into one column. There are separate budgets for those activities, and they are very separate activities. But for the purposes of aligning with the economic development three-legged stool, they are combined here before you. So walking down the numbers, the first one I'll touch on is professional services. So the number there is made up of design and engineering services that we frequently use when we are citing new business prospects and preparing site layouts and site concepts for those prospects. Also, in 2020, we will launch a new program that's a virtual redevelopment program. So with the diminishing shovel-ready land, we really need to focus a lot harder on infill and looking at existing buildings. And one of the things that we always run up against when we receive RFPs for example, Class A office space, we don't really have any available Class A office space. However, if we had some Class B office space that we could work with a local design firm and create a virtual spec, if you will, of that space, then maybe we can sneak into those RFPs and say, well, we don't have any Class A office space, but here's what this building would look like as Class A space. And here's the timeline to make it that, what you need, and an estimated cost. So just looking at some creative ways that we could maybe get in the running for some projects that we haven't been able to in the past. Also, as we always have, incentive audit services. So our incentives are all performance-based, and we bring in a third party to go on-site to those employers to make sure that they are meeting their performance metrics before they receive their incentives. So that's in the professional services line as well. Sales travel. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but obviously Rhiannon and I are out building relationships, talking to companies and site selectors that are looking at expansion opportunities and attending marketing events to build the awareness of the assets that we have in Topeka and Shawnee County. Also prospect development, bringing those companies and site selectors into our community to show them with their own eyes what we have here and allow them to see that firsthand. The next one I'll touch on is grants, sponsorships, contributions. This line is made up of our membership in the Kansas City Area Development Council, along with Team Kansas, which is the marketing arm of the State Department of Commerce, and a few other smaller partner organizations that are the major sources of our leads for new business attraction. So investing in those partner organizations allows us to have a greater chance and a larger prospect list. national and international ad placements. This is the cost of actually purchasing the ad space, not the creative development, but just the ad buys that we place in both international and national publications, niche publications, and the main site selector publications, as well as digital and online presence. Okay. So moving across, I'm covering for the whole team just for efficiency's sake. So when we get to the end, if you have questions, we may call up the rest of my coworkers. Small business and entrepreneurial ecosystem. So within this column, you'll see professional services as well as kind of the first larger number. And we've talked a lot about an innovation campus and an innovation center. So some design and feasibility costs within the professional services line is what is making up that portion of the budget. Moving down to program and event expense. Small business conference, you'll see as Glenda starts to share more information about 2020 plans, but the Small Business Awards has always been a huge hit in our community, and celebrating our small businesses is a big deal. And so we are transitioning into a larger program to make that more of a full day event. Also, the training offerings that we have within Go Topeka for the Kaufman Fast Track classes and the Wheelhouse Incubator that is new this year, that's been a big hit. Those are in the program and event expense as well. And then the startup of the Innovation Center is in that line item also. For the grant sponsorships and contributions, in this column we have PTAC, which, to remind you of all of our alphabet soup, is Procurement and Technical Assistance Center. So we have Christy Dunn housed within Go Topeka that helps folks learn how to navigate the public RFP process, clear on up to the federal level. And then the special line item there for occupancy over and above what we have now is occupancy for the Innovation Center that would be located somewhere in the downtown area. Also, national and international ad placements and branding. With Katryn's program standing up and the involvement with Plug and Play, we really need to do a better job of putting ourselves on the map with those industries of ag tech, animal health, biosciences. So there will be some opportunities to do that within the content of our regular advertising, but we'll need to look at some different publications and some different associations that we need to make sure we're involved in with that as well. Moving right along. Stop me if you have any major questions, or we can cover them at the end. So this is a little change, Minority and Women Business Development. In the past, you've heard us talk about EMBD. All we're doing with the change in terminology here is just aligning with the interlocal agreement language. So the 10% that is set aside and allocated toward these activities is what you'll see reflected in this column. Professional services here. The plan for 2020 is to look at a retail assessment that would benefit the underserved populations and geographies within Topeka and Shawnee County. And we're in early conversations with the city because I know they have that in their plans as well. So how do we leverage that together and make sure that when we go out to look at retail assessment that we're looking at all of the community and we're hitting all the pieces of the different populations that we need to better serve. Empowerment Center coaches. So I think Glenda had maybe reported on this, but if we report to so many groups, I don't remember if she's talked to you all about this yet. But it's a partnership with the Topeka Housing Authority and an incubator in the facility that had been at Pine Ridge for the aquaponics facility. And so launching an empowerment center there, and the professional services associated with that are the coaches that would help really hold the hands of those people that are in that community that are looking to start businesses and make sure that they know the steps along the way and are set up for success. Program and event expenses in this column are attached to that and the startup of that center with the Topeka Housing Authority. Okay, and then grant sponsorships and contributions. This is a smaller amount, but wanted to touch on it as well. This is just the support of partner organizations throughout the community that still meet the targeted demographic and the targeted needs that are outlined in the interlocal agreement. So when opportunities to support other folks that are meeting the mission for that funding arises, then we look at supporting those. and branding and advertising of programs. So just making sure that the community knows what resources are available, where to find them, the steps to go through to apply for the different programs and to take advantage of the training offerings that we have. Okay, moving along to talent initiatives. This one, I'm just going to touch on two items, moving down to grants, sponsorships, contributions. 100,000 of that number that you see there is the JEDO scholarships that we have done for a few years now. So we've always offered those scholarships at the Washburn Tech campus, and we're duplicating that at Washburn Tech East. And those are scholarships for high wage, high demand programs. And you know, with announcements tonight, we know that there is a need to keep filling those classrooms for those high wage, high demand programs. So that will be important. And those scholarships, we've talked about this in the past, but those scholarships are obtained through the normal process that any other scholarship would, and they're administered through the financial aid office at the campus. The next item would be advertising, and that's a talent attraction marketing campaign. Later on in the agenda tonight, you'll talk about Choose Topeka, but this line item will exist whether Choose Topeka is approved or not, because we need to attract talent here. We need to talk about how great it is to live here and work here, and we really need to be strategic and almost surgical with who we want to attract here, because we need to grow our population and we need to do it strategically. And with that, I'm finished with the program overview. So we're going to throw a lot at you and move on to Natalie. Unless you have questions for me now, I'll stand for those.
At this point in time, do we have any questions for Molly? We don't?
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick on the last couple columns here, the general administrative expenses represent those economic development related expenses that don't directly correlate to any of the 4 programs or columns we just talked about. So these are the overarching expenses, things like our finance, admin, marketing, communications, HR, shared services, as well as JEDO expenses set aside per the contract, and the support for the Governor's Military Council, and then software and subscriptions for a lot of our data analysis and data mining softwares that we use in order to attract and get the data that we use to present the economic impact to you when we do our present for contract. And then the other items within that column are things such as rent, office expense, some of those things that are, again, not directly correlated with any of the 4 major programs. And then the last 2 columns, the first grade column that you see within your budget spreadsheet is the total ongoing programming. So the total ongoing programming operating budget for 2020 is $2.652 million, which is compared to $2.356 from last year, just to give you a benchmark there. Then we shift over into the special initiatives columns, which is the second part, which historically would have been kind of down at the bottom of the budget worksheet that we would present to you in the past. We've shifted them over again into a separate section of columns. And the 2 main strategic initiatives we have going on right now is the Washburn Tech East program. And within this includes the partnership funds as well as interest and insurance on that location. And then the last column for the special initiatives column is the phase 2, which is on track with what was approved for the NEDO workforce transportation program. And with that, that's all I have, and we'll stand for questions.
Do we have any questions at this point in time? All right, seeing none, what is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by the Deputy Mayor. We have a second by Councilman Lesser. Additional discussion. Before we move into discussion, before we move into voting, we do have 4 individuals signed up to speak. The first one being Reverend Meredith Kemp Pappen.
Hi, you got a full house. That's a good thing. Good evening. My name is Reverend Meredith Kemp Papan, and I am pastor of Trinity Presbyterian Church here in Topeka, and I am a proud member of Topeka Jump. Our primary concern this evening is the survival of SOTO and NETO programs. We want to express that we are grateful that funds have been allocated for the Ride to Work programs for 2020. We're excited about that. We know that there are people in our community who need these programs. If you read your third quarter report, then you know that 4,000 riders took advantage of the Ride to Work program in the last quarter. All night, we've listened to you discuss and approve multiple incentives for large businesses that are either expanding or moving into Shawnee County. We've heard from employers that the competition for good workers is here, that Kansans are talented, and that it's fierce, and that reliable jobs need reliable workers, and reliable workers need reliable transportation. There's a significant segment of our population in Topeka who do not own a car or who cannot drive. And these people need to get to work. SODO and NEDO have been extremely successful programs, and we want to see them continue. We are grateful for Mr. Emerson for working with us and for Go Topeka for making sure that these programs will continue in 2020. Topeka Jump compels this body to hold Go Topeka and Topeka Metro accountable to come up with a long-term plan to protect SODO and NEDO riders. These programs began so we could test to see, well, let's just see if there's even a need for rides to major employers. And the need has been proven, and since its inception, Ride to Work has provided over 23,000 rides. The logical next step is coming up with a long-term plan for the programs and executing that plan well. These are good programs, but they're not perfect, and this program has been run on assumptions. We have no contracts with the companies using SODO. There has not even been a memorandum of understanding between Topeka Metro or Go Topeka or Capital City Taxi. People depend on these programs for their livelihood. They deserve the assurance that this program will be there, that will get them to work, so they can support their families. This requires that there be a long-term plan in place to support the Ride to Work programs. In my community of faith, we're in Advent. Advent means waiting. And we're told to actively wait with our lamps trimmed and our minds awakened for the opportunity to act. And we have waited for SODO and NEDO to begin. We have waited for riders to take advantage. We have waited to see it funded. And the time of waiting is over. We will continue to meet with JEDO and Go Topeka Metro in 2020, and we will not let these riders be left behind. I appreciate the time, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next person signed up to speak is Deborah Vance.
Hello. My name is Deborah Vance, and I'm a member of El Shaddai Ministries and a member of Topeka Jump. But more importantly, in this moment, I am the mother of a SODO rider. My son Marcus has been using SODO since he started to work at Target Distribution Center. My son Marcus does not have a car. The only reason he applied to work at Target was because of the new SODO. He knew SODO would get him there. He has been working at Target on the night shift for 3 months. He takes SODO to work at 6 p.m. and uses it to get home at 6 a.m. every morning. Because of SODO and his job at Target, Marcus was able to move his family into a house just last week. Before he could save enough money for a security deposit, he and his children were living in hotels. The SODO program has been a major help to my family. Without it, my son would still be working at a minimum wage job in the city and trying to feed his family with a $7.25 an hour job. So it is essential to get, SODO is essential to get working class people on their feet. If the SODO program disappears, Marcus would lose his job and have to start over. We thank you for supporting the Ride to Work programs for people like my son and so many others. The time has come for Topeka Metro and Go Topeka to figure out a long-term plan for this program. We need workforce transportation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Dan Foltz. The next person signed up to speak is Kurt Kuda. All right. So we have a motion, we have a second. Are there any additional discussion items that you want to run through before we proceed with the voting? Commissioner Cook.
Can we have, Molly, can you address the SOTO and where that falls within the budget? And also the contracts that we have, the contact with Topeka Metro, and where that stands, and how we got to this point?
Yeah, so I was moving along too quickly and didn't hit the bullet, but you probably saw it on the screen. We do have within the Talent Initiatives budget some funding set aside for workforce barrier support programs. That has not been identified as SOTO or not as SOTO. I think right now we have come to the conclusion that we need to have more conversations to ferret out the details with the new leadership at the Topeka Metro and talk about whether there is a path to success in continuing that program. So there is funding set aside if that makes best sense for the businesses that are involved as well. We also need to query them and see which businesses do plan to continue that program. And then your other part of the question was, do you want me to set the stage for how it came about and what the plan was originally? Okay. So we talked about workforce transportation years ago, and when SOTO started, it was just supposed to be SOTO and just supposed to be a pilot to gather the data to see if there was enough ridership to stand up a full route, bus route with Topeka Metro. So while there's not enough ridership to stand up a full route, we do need to have conversations with new leadership to see what their appetite is for going forward. So Netto was an add-on and was over and above what was originally discussed, just because we thought it would be most fair to the larger businesses that are on the north side of town too, to gather that information and for them to see if it makes business sense for them to attract workers and be able to take advantage of a program like that. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
It does. So within the budget, though, there is an allocation for continued ridership. There is an allocation, well, first, Netto is specifically listed in the budget, so there's no question as to that.
Yes.
So the question really then is as to SOTO and its continuation. There is money set aside, and it is the intent of the Greater Topeka Partnership, Go Topeka, to continue with those South Topeka businesses.
There's $40,000 in the Talent Initiatives budget to continue conversations to see if it makes sense to continue that program. We haven't written in stone that that's what that would be for, but we do plan to continue having conversations with Topeka Metro to see if they have an appetite to continue, and again, with the businesses to see if they have an appetite to continue.
And you also said that Mars was willing to use some of the firehouse money
Correct.
towards SOTO.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Councilman Emerson.
Ms. Howe, I guess, can you give me an idea on timing? Hearing Mrs. Vance speak, I think it ends does it end at the end of this month?
Yes. Yeah. the end
So
of the year.
I guess my fear is if you have people that are actively needing it right now, you're going to need time to have those conversations. Is there a commitment, or would the partnership make a commitment to extending that for a few months while those conversations take place?
Yeah, I think that Go Topeka's portion would be fine to commit. It's the partnership with the Topeka Metro that is the question mark, and I don't mean to be throwing them under the bus.
No pun intended on that one.
We just really need to get that leadership some time to wrap their head around that, and we've had some conversations as recently as this week, and met with the Jump folks as well. So I think there's probably a path to success. It just hasn't been outlined in detail yet. So to answer your question, Go Topeka would be supportive to continue our portion of the funding.
Thank you.
And Molly, if there's anything that I can do or we can do to be supportive in those conversations, count us in.
Okay.
All right? So, that being said, we have a motion and a second. We've had ample discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We now move on to item J, if the clerk would read.
J is approval of the 2019-2020 carry forward agreement.
Ms. Howie?
Okay, sorry, you guys are gonna get sick of me.
Never.
Cash carry forward. So this is customary for an agenda item at the December JEDO meetings. You have in your packet the contract that is the same as it has been in years past. We are requesting to carry forward $14.5 million in cash. The total expenditures we have approved in the budget for 2020 total 5.127. So we have a use of cash of $127,000 for 2020. So that's the first line item that you see here. We like to go through this just to educate the public as well as all of the members of JEDO to understand that the $14.5 million, there is a number of items that are encumbered and committed that make up that dollar amount. So we'll walk through that here together and then obviously stand for questions. So restricted uses by contract, the MWBD program carryover. So the number that you see here, the 1.3 million, is the cumulative unspent funds that are reserved to be allocated for that 10% funding of the 5 million. We also have the Konza Fire Park and Firehouse from the Mars contract, and right now that's sitting at $800,000, so that would need to be transferred back over to Mars. Future commitments. The committed incentives that are listed here do include Project Emerald and Project Lightning. So this number has grown, and we're at about 5.6 million for incentives that have already been approved by this body. Washburn Tech East, as we discussed earlier, in the budget, we have some partnership funds and interest that will finish out this project, and that's in the amount of $531,000. 49th Street improvements, we all know that project is done and over with, but as of today, just to be super accurate, the funding for that project has not been paid to the city and county yet. We do expect for those checks to be transferred over to those accounts by the end of the year, but it's not included in this 14.5. Reserves for special purpose. This $3 million is the only item that really even has any subjectivity to it. So this is what you would call a deal closing fund. The next time we have another project that we need to offer incentives, we need to make sure that we haven't emptied our coffers and that we've got some funding to level the playing field and attract companies to grow and expand here. So in the past, we had that number at $5 million. With recent projects that you've seen tonight, we feel comfortable that $3 million would be okay to close probably 2 decent-sized projects just based on trends that we're seeing. So that would leave a little over $2 million remaining for future investment. And you've all been involved in intimate discussions around innovation and entrepreneurship and the startup of an innovation campus and the assets that we need to build here to attract the talent and the companies that are coming out of Plug and Play and the companies that we will attract just based on the work that Katrin and the Innovation Advisory Board are doing. So we need to make sure that when companies come here and go through the Plug and Play program, that they have lab space and space to start up their companies here and don't have to leave us because the facilities aren't available. So that's an idea of something that could be used for those future investments. And really, that covers everything that we have slated for potential uses of carry forward dollars. So I would stand for questions and clarifications.
Before we entertain questions, we have 2 individuals signed up to speak. Mr. Foltz. And as you can predict, Mr. Kuda. All right. So any questions for Molly? Or discussion? Seeing no questions, what is the pleasure of the body?
Move for approval.
We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Cook. We have a second by Councilman Emerson. Seeing no additional comments or questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We now move on to item K, if the clerk would read.
K is approval of Choose Topeka funding.
Good evening. At the last JEDO meeting, we showed you a peek of the printed materials that you have in front of you this evening, the talent recruitment collateral that was developed for recruiters and HR professionals to support them in their attraction and retention efforts. That's just a piece of all of the talent support we're developing, including a landing page and videos to support attraction, retention, and population growth efforts. We also shared that we're tasked by our board to create an aggressive outside-the-box talent initiative. You may remember that our Momentum 2022 strategic plan indicated that of those workers in the county that made over $40,000 a year, only 40% resided within the, or 40% resided outside the county. This initiative is leading edge and that we're looking at. It's going to shift kind of that migration and hopefully grow our population, but also attract and retain future growth. We looked at several key programs, and I shared with those previously in other communities. Both the state of Vermont as well as the city of Tulsa are currently providing remote worker incentives, encouraging someone who works remotely to select a state or city to live in. Participants share their stories and indicate that they find the anonymity of a larger city oppressive, and they're ready to get back to that intentional community, able to have a desire to make an impact on the community in which they live and they become a part of, so that they're a community building support. That's the number one reason why these people applied to those other programs. And that's really what we're looking at now, related to, whoops, I went a little bit forward, related to the project that we've developed. This is a matching funds program. It invests employees to live and work in Topeka and Shawnee County. And it shows those employees the community's investment as well as their employer's investment, that it's a shared cost in partnership with employers. Whether it's a remote worker program as the ones that we have looked at, or the aggressive attraction program that we're presenting to you this evening, the cost to encourage workers to move to a community remains the same. And you'll see on the slide, moving costs to move a 1 to 2 bedroom apartment can range anywhere from $4,000 to $7,000 alone. And then when you're moving a 3 to 4 bedroom household, it can range from $10,000 to $16,000 depending upon distance in the community in which that person is moving from. That's for primary residences only that we're looking to develop this. The rental agreement would be an incentive for JEDO, the $5,000 piece, as well as the $5,000 piece for the employer. And the purchase or rehabilitation of a home would be $7,500 for JEDO and $7,500 for the employer. JEDO's incentives, like we always do, are pay for performance, so this would be pay for performance as well. It's not upfront. It's after the employees moved and resided here for over a year. Employers may have agreements with employees that are even longer than that, and they would be able to continue to work to grow and retain that employee. So as we align our efforts, we've received input from community and board members, as well as employers and human resources and talent recruitment directors. And I'd like to invite both Kelly Dugan with Bartlett and West, and after David Callahan with Advisors Excel, to share a bit more now, because that's who you want to hear from.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here. So I've had the opportunity to talk with a couple of you over the past couple of weeks about the Choose Topeka initiative, and I continue to be so excited about this as I have conversations with other HR professionals in Topeka, and as I've also talked to you about this initiative. So I've worked in HR in this community over the past 27 years, both at 2 different companies in Topeka that have had the headquarters here. And one of the biggest challenges that we've had in HR is the recruiting and the retention of talent to Topeka. So one of the things, really the major thing that really got my attention when Barbara was talking to me about this initiative is that I love that what it is, it's not, in my opinion, buying talent, but it's showing the talent that we're trying to bring to our community or to get to stay in our community, that we really have a commitment to this town, to this county. And all you have to do is look over the last 5 years at what we've done. Look at downtown, look at Wheatfield, look at, the VOTEC, the technical, look at what's going on with Washburn University, that we can demonstrate that there truly is a commitment to growing this community. And when you've got an initiative like this that you can share with people that you're recruiting for some of these sometimes very difficult to fill positions, when you're able to show them what the community is willing to invest as well, it just gives them that additional incentive to really consider Topeka. So as I've talked with Barbara about this program, I started talking with some of the other HR professionals in the community and asked, would you have an interest in this? Would this be something that would have worked for you? And one of the things that one of the local HR directors was sharing with me, a director with a company that's got 700 plus employees in the state of Kansas, was that just recently they had been trying to recruit some talent from outside of the city. And when it came down to the person making the decision, they accepted the job, but what they didn't want to do was live in Topeka. And so in order to take the job, they're now living in Kansas City and they're commuting back and forth. I think this is one of those things that, again, it shows the commitment to the community. And yes, it is additional dollars that helps. We do, where I work currently, we move people. We pay these costs, or we help them pay these costs. And you're looking at anywhere from $8,000 to $16,000 to move. So sure, it helps with the dollars, but also think about what it says about this community and the fact that we're willing to invest in it. Thank you.
All right, my name's David Callahan. I'm one of the founders of Advisors Excel. I felt blessed to get the opportunity to chat with you guys just a couple months ago. And I think that was really discussing the idea of adding a lot of people and really trying to grow the jobs here in the community. And that, Cody and I, along with our entire team at Advisors Excel, are extremely passionate about the idea of growing jobs that are valuable to the community but also valuable to people. But even when I was here at that time, I kind of pulled up some of my notes. One thing I talked about was one of the cool things at Advisors Excel is we've been able to effectively attract people from San Diego, Boston, we've attracted people from Minneapolis, and we've attracted multiple people from the Kansas City market. None of them live here. None of them. They all live in Kansas City. And I think from our perspective, first and foremost, we want to work really, really hard to invest to ensure that those people stay here, because once their families get here, they realize the town's pretty cool. Once their kids get into schools, they realize those are pretty cool, and they're going to stay forever. And they're going to stay partnered with our community, build their families here, get educated in our community, and stick around a long time. That's a legacy type thing. They stay in Kansas City, we're building jobs. We get to move to Topeka, we're building legacies. To me, that's a big, big deal. But I'll be real and just be frank with you. Even with the initiative, the commitment Cody and I have to all the jobs we've committed to hire in the local marketplace, right now we have 50 jobs posted. I know that at least 10 of those are going to be virtually impossible to hire in this community due to some of the limited talent pool. There is some limitations, especially in specialty areas. You start getting off into where we have a business specialty in wealth management. There aren't a bunch of wealth management platforms here in our local marketplace building the same type of business as we are. So it's a little bit challenging. I think when you get into IT specialty, like building software, big technology software in the CRM space, those are challenging positions. That's not a limitation to Topeka. That's a limitation of most communities, to be clear. And all we really want, we just want to be equipped with tools, because we are willing to invest in this to draw those people here. But for to be key, we really don't want employees. We want people rooted in the community that stay here a long time. That's why Cody and I call Topeka our home. We'll continue to call it our home, because we believe that's building legacies in the community. It's not just creating jobs. I will conclude with this from just a really additional, maybe important perspective. One of the cool opportunities is we have started at Advisors Excel, because we know we have some of these gaps in some of these key areas and positions. We've started to recruit around the Midwest. I thought what HR Director from Bartlett and West said that is perfect is alignment matters to people. So when we start investing some dollars into recruiting out of Kansas City or Omaha or Des Moines or Oklahoma City or Tulsa, which we are recruiting in all those markets now, frankly, they're very, very expensive marketing dollars to spend, because we can't tell an alignment story. We just go tell the Advisors Excel story that frankly doesn't have brand recognition in those marketplaces, and then we're really just stuck on solely, hey, we need you to pick up your family and get here. I really liked what she had to say, and I thought it was spot on. What you want to tell those people is an alignment story, where not only the business is aligned to investing in you, but also the community is aligned to investing. This is a growing place. This is a place that's expanding. And to be clear, you're giving HR directors a lot of valuable tools by them not only being able to tell their own business story, but to be able to tell an alignment story. And then more specifically for a company like Advisors Excel, it allows us to go deploy a lot of additional dollars into marketing, which is what we love to do, to try to up that resume pool and really draw people in. Right now, frankly, the dollars we're spending in marketing to try to draw people in, they become a little disheartening when the people don't land in our community. And we really, really want that. And like I said, Cody and I up front are willing to put the money from this perspective because it matters to us. But just because we put up dollars, if we don't put up alignment, it doesn't work as well. So to me, $5,000 or $7,500 is less about the cash. It's more about the alignment and the passion to bring amazing people to our community to build their legacy here. I hope that's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Did I invite the two people to talk on this?
It's great for you to hear it from our employers and from our business owners and from our HR and talent recruitment partners within the community. We've already received approval from the Go Topeka Board to encumber $300,000 to fund Choose Topeka incentives for the 2021 budget. And this evening, we're seeking approval from JEDO to do the same, with a launch and promotion of the initiative beginning in 2020, as Molly mentioned earlier. This will provide incentive funds for 40 to 60 new resident workers and could allow for the population growth to double with families and trailing partners in the community. With that, I'll stand for any other questions.
Do we have questions with regards? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Couple of thoughts. Is there a commitment of how long they would stay in the community?
Most employers have longer-term commitments when they do those recruitment initiatives. We would not be trying to serve as a job seeker manager of those. The employers usually will have 18-month, even 2-year contracts that they enter into in agreements with those employees, and that would be something that employers would manage. But we would require that they be employed for a minimum of a year prior to the employer seeking reimbursement of the 50% match.
And the only other thing that worries me or concerns or thoughts is overlooking our homegrown talent over someone coming in just because they're coming in. I don't want to, because this person lives outside and we want to grow our talent pool, that we overlook what we have.
Well, we're not overlooking what we have. As David mentioned, this is establishing a legacy. So it can also be existing employees that are within the community right now working, but they may not be living here. So we're trying to help them establish those roots here long-term to grow into the future. It's both our existing talent that we may have, but they've chosen to live somewhere else, as well as recruiting that talent, like you said, in those targeted markets where there's not many in terms of wealth management, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cook.
Barbara, help me out here just a little bit. 3 years ago, you came to us and said, we really need to incentivize getting people to work. And we started SOTO. 2 years ago, you came to us and said, we really need to incentivize getting workforce development. And we started Washburn Tech. Last year, you said we really need to work on getting people to work in North Topeka. Tonight, we added 470 jobs, and we put aside just a very small amount towards transportation initiative. We have a room filled with people who are wondering, how are those 470 people going to get to work? And where are we going to get those 470 people from? If you look at Topeka's already employment, there may not be 470 people in Topeka today to fill those jobs. So why shouldn't we use that money to keep the people that we have in Topeka and getting them to those 470 jobs, as opposed to trying to recruit for Kansas City, where we have larger corporations who would have that of their own opportunities to recruit. So why should that be the responsibility of Go Topeka?
There's several different things that we look at related to that. Yeah, I mean, and those are all excellent questions. some of the things that when we talk about this, if we continue to try and just wrap fences around the things that we have and don't look at the return on investment, and I apologize, my return on investment numbers were not on the slides this evening. I apologize on that part. But when we look at this investment, and I appreciate what you're saying, but when we look at $5,000 of this particular investment, it's a 10 times return on investment. The growth is exponential in terms of over 10 years, and I believe, if I remember correctly, an $11 million ROI on this $300,000 in terms of investing to recruit to the community. I would agree. I worry every day when we talk about adding jobs, looking at what our workforce population is currently. There are more than 400 people that are unemployed in the community, and there is the ability to work and sustain that. And I appreciate the conversations and the commitments that you all made and shared this evening related to SOTO and NEDO, because we were tasked by you all to look at workforce transportation. And we looked at that and did it and developed it as a pilot. I think it's wonderful that you're talking about considering that to be a permanent initiative. And I appreciate that there is community support related to that as well. So all of these are intertwined. And you're right. I mean, we talk about all these different things. We're continuing to educate people in terms of at the career technical education level, and we're continuing to see that growth. We've had almost 400 students in the first year for Washburn Tech East. So that education is important for those 400 jobs. That transportation is important for those workers. And all of this is very much intertwined. So, yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's something that all has to be lifted and elevated together. It doesn't stand alone. This is just a piece of that. It's one of those tools in the toolkit for our employers. It's going to be for those hard-to-fill positions, those strategic positions that they may not be able to fill otherwise. And when they're able to fill that one, then they're also able to fill those others that are able to employ existing workers that are in the community too. So it's very much a symbiotic relationship between all of those things that you mentioned.
And if I could add, I think that we have to be very cognizant of something. All boats must rise. And it's important for us to understand that, because as we continue looking for ways to support our current citizens in our community, and we talk about numbers like unemployment, we gloss over the fact that unemployment is not as important as understanding that most people in our community that are currently working are having to have more than 2 jobs in order for them to sustain. So what we are doing with Washburn Tech East is absolutely imperative so that we can actually say that from the individuals that are here in our community, we are making investments. What we cannot forget is that we have great corporations like Advisors, like Bartlett and West. Just yesterday, City Manager and I had a meeting with the Board of Fire Appeals, and they were telling us that they were struggling to fill that board because they did not have a structural engineer in the city of Topeka. They have 2. They have 2. And they cannot do their job for our community because we don't have that talent pool in our community. What I am excited about with this initiative is that it allows the opportunity for corporations like Advisors, for our Board of Appeals, for Bartlett and West, for the hospital that struggles significantly to have people here. I don't know if you guys know this, but one of our top surgeons travels from Chicago to Kansas just to do surgery and goes back home. Our surgeons. So what we're trying to do is at the same time that we're trying to support our low-income community, support the people that are having to work 2 jobs, provide the empowerment and the ability to have an education, provide the ability for you to get to work with all of the things that we're doing. We cannot forego and say that we don't need the talented, skill set people that are going to come into our community, increase not only our population, but increase the base of the individuals that are paying into our tax pool that are going to help us continue providing the support to the other side. I think this is an innovative approach. Just like yesterday, it's new. It's scary when we were talking about what we did yesterday for downtown. But I think it's something that as a community that is trying to reinvent itself, and to bring in new people into our community, something that we should consider, especially looking at the ROI that it would have in our community. Absolutely.
And Mayor, I with all due respect, I don't know that I can agree with you completely. I understand that, yes, we should, everything does lift, and we should continue to lift up our community. but for every story as to why they haven't moved, whether it's the surgeon from Chicago or the family in Kansas City. In my own family, my wife for 7 years traveled from Topeka to Manhattan to work for Kansas State University. She did that every day, carpool. We had no intent of ever moving to Manhattan. $7,000, $15,000 would not have changed our home. Our home is here in Topeka. And I think that, where this money comes from, we're sometimes lose sight of where this $5 million a year comes from. It comes from us, the taxpayers. Every time you fill up with your fuel, every time you buy a cheeseburger, every time you buy potato chips at the store, those are your sales tax that's being reinvested, and the intent was to reinvest back into our community. If we were talking about a marketing campaign, if we were talking about hitting hard in surrounding communities, Kansas City or Manhattan or Chicago, to say, come to Topeka, that's one thing. What you're asking us to bite off onto, and Barbara is asking us to agree to, is to paying people to move. And I think that's where I don't know that I can support. I'm not there yet, and I'm not ready to support it. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Deputy Councilman Jensen, to be followed by Councilman Lesser.
So, I understand your concern. What I would tell you is we're fixing to be desperate for people in this community. We need folks to come here. And so I think you all should at least give this a shot and try it. I think we should try, pretty much everything we come up with to try and get our community going and get it built. Last night, as the mayor mentioned, we voted on a type of TIPS district that this community has never seen. We're trying something new and innovative to continue building our community. Last year, this board voted to invest in quality of life, something that it significantly struggled with and something it's not done before. With great success so far, and some of these things aren't even open yet. So we need to get out on a limb and to be uncomfortable and to try new things, because the status quo is not going to continue to build our community. The time of traditional economic development, the big box economic development that we've relied upon for so many years to build our community, is sunsetting. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's the way that is done is changing. So yes, we're going to have to do innovative things like this and try. It may not be successful. We don't know. It could be wildly successful. And if we don't try it, we'll have jeopardized that. You'll miss 100% of the shots you never take. And I absolutely encourage you to take this one and try it. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser.
I too understand your concerns, Mr. Cook. I think it's a great idea from the standpoint of, I see this as an incentive not buying employees. And I see this as the people these are going to appeal to are going to be young families, young professionals that having the ability to have this incentive maybe is what pushes them over the edge to be able to buy their first house and do that in Topeka and then start their family. And then, who knows if it spins off to starting their own company if they're a professional, all those different things that come. And like I said, the other thing is, even in my business, I've found is there's certain, as David kind of had alluded, there's certain positions that they just are not here. I think you're right. We're not going to get that surgeon from Chicago to move to Topeka. That's not going to happen. But I think we might be able to get that young kid out of med school who's already got med school debt and all those type of things. Say, maybe, hey, at least I maybe can get the down payment on my house and start here. And those are the things that I think that we're maybe looking for. So it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Let's take a chance and see what happens.
Deputy Mayor.
A couple questions that I might have missed. First question is, and it might go along with Commissioner Cook, why is JEDO involved? Why isn't this up to the employees to do? If my money is going to pay for someone to move here, and I don't even know who it is, I don't know if they're right for the job, I don't know that I want to do that. And I lost my next question, but why does JEDO need to, or Go Topeka need to be involved? Why isn't it just the employers?
Well, the employers are the ones. It is a matching partnership
I know,
with the
but
employers.
why is it matching? Why don't they just do it themselves if they need that person?
Oftentimes they do. It is more aggressive than that. This is, again, as I'd said, it's a tool. It's a piece in the toolkit that they would use. It's only going to be, in terms of the amount of funds that we're talking about, it's a small amount for 40 to 60 applicants within that first year. And it is a pilot. It is not something that we're setting in stone. This is really exactly what Commissioner Cook was referencing as a recruitment campaign. It is that marketing piece to be able to share that, to get that information out about Topeka. It's comprehensive, and this is just a component of that related to the collateral that you have before you this evening, the website that's been designed, the videos that have been designed and are in design. That's all part of those recruitment pieces that the employers need. We would not be picking the individual employees, and that's the employers in terms of what the candidate pool is that they need, how they need to negotiate that. And so it's kind of like if you're negotiating something related to either an existing employee in terms of a promotion or a new employee, you may negotiate on paid time off. You may negotiate on job title. You may negotiate on a lot of different things. This is one of those negotiation pieces that as the professionals, our HR managers and our talent recruitment managers, they're the professionals related to what is it that they need. And this is just adding to that toolkit. And it's helping us that way to get the word out about Topeka being open for business. When Tulsa was one of the projects that we looked at. It's a remote worker program project. I spared you the details earlier, but I'll share them now. It's remote workers to encourage people to come work or live in Tulsa and work remotely for a company anywhere else in the world. They thought as a marketing campaign that they were probably going to receive 100, 200 applicants. They received 100 applicants in the first day. They received 10,000 applicants and had to cut it off. They selected 100 for their pilot too. Doesn't mean they're going to do it annually either, but it really generates that interest of going, well, hey, maybe I should go look at Topeka. Maybe I should look at the website. I didn't realize all of this was happening, that there's a plug-and-play location now, that they're situated on the Animal Health Corridor, and that's really where I want to be. Like Sam started his business in the basement with Bimini Health. He's situated directly along the Animal Health Corridor and growing. So it's entrepreneurial, it's forward-thinking. Matt always shares that it is leading edge, not bleeding edge, which is true. It's a nominal investment to be able to really move that PR and marketing for the community forward as a whole.
I remember my next question. So what's the max amount that you would be giving into this program?
So it is for primary residents only. So if someone were moving to Topeka, if they signed a lease agreement for an apartment, a maximum would be $10,000 whole.
No, I mean, what do you expect to spend on this program?
We're seeking encumbrance of $300,000 for 2020 to be expended, 2021 to be expended.
Okay.
That would cover 40 to 60 applicants.
Okay.
Barbara, would it be possible to have Freddie provide some statistical information of the success of these programs in different places? Take it easy on us, Freddie.
So I would like to start with the argument of population change over time. So since 2010 to 2018, Shawnee County lost about 800 people. This is a declining population of roughly negative 0.5%. At the same time, our neighbors, let's say Douglas, have gained about 9.2%, or roughly more than 10,000 people. Johnson, about the same percentage, 9.2, 9.4%, over 51,000 people. So with the population decline, our jobs still increasing, there's going to be a point where that is going to keep creating more friction to the labor market. it will be more difficult to expand, it will be more difficult to add jobs. We're losing people, and the community is losing people. Sales revenue could decline. So the objective was to grow the population, have additional people, bring more families, and move that negative trend on population decline in our region. So Kansas as a whole is growing little by little. But if you look at where is the growth coming from, it's practically 2 or 3 regions, and we're not one of those. And so my fear is that if we continue to decline, it will be more difficult to expand businesses, it will be more difficult to have new jobs and attract new companies. So when I look at this project, I estimate that gain on sales taxes and property taxes. So we're looking at roughly between 40 to 60 new families. The assumption was $60,000 per year. So we are gaining roughly $1,500 per household in additional taxes. So when I look at this program, I can remember it was within the first 2 years, 2 to 3 years, the whole $300,000 will be completely paid off. You will have additional people. You will have more citizens buying goods and services in the county. So it will technically benefit the sales taxes, the property taxes, the sales taxes in the county. At the same time, it will increase the population. So that was the objective. The return on investment is about, so for each household, I think that it was roughly $55,000 you were gaining for every $5,000. So return on investment, it's almost about tenfold. So necessarily not a bad investment. So,
Commissioner Cook?
Freddie, investment of $300,000. Is that going to lower crime? Statistically, can you say that investment is going to lower crime?
I would not be able to say that. No, I don't.
Okay. Can you say it's going to increase or improve the educational system of USD 501's School of Topeka?
Well, in this case, if the school, if 501 primarily fund source, it comes from property taxes, and there are some families that will be moving into that neighborhood that you could technically have the case where the total general funds will increase.
Okay. Can't we agree that the reason why we've seen some property loss or the population loss, is in housing, available housing, what housing is available? Is this going to increase the housing that's available on stock right now?
Not directly, but I would say indirectly has the potential, as you have in. So if I would be a housing developer, one of the criteria that I would look in is population growing in order for me to develop new housing to meet that demand. So if I look directly at the population decline, then I would probably say no. If I see that the population is increasing for whatever factor, in this case, for attributed to this program, plus new jobs, plus new benefits, then I would say then that would probably persuade me to change that.
I mean, because if I'm going to be perfectly blunt, among my own peers in professional class, the reason they don't want to live in the city is crime or perception of crime.
Okay.
The educational system or other educational opportunities immediately outside of the city of Topeka. And I mean, there's a hardcore commitment of those of us that live in Topeka that continue to have our children in Topeka in education. But that's one of the things that we see. This isn't going to fix those problems. And so, I mean, we've got to get to the root as to what the population is. And $300,000 in recruitment doesn't fix crime, it doesn't fix education, it doesn't fix infrastructure. And those are the real key issues that we have in attracting people to Topeka.
So is the argument that, so let's say that this program works optimally, and you have these 60 new households. the argument is that they would move within the county boundaries, but outside the city of Topeka. Is that what it is?
Well, I mean, we've seen in our population growth, the county population has gone up, city population has gone down, your overall county has remained flat. All we're really doing is shifting people from the inner core to the outside, which was, again, the conversation several years ago about the donut. And if you look at our planning departments, our planning department and through Legump have tried to do everything they could to shut down that growth on the outside exterior of the city of Topeka. So Councilwoman Hiller here, she could probably speak more eloquently as to that plan.
So I do want to make a few remarks. We're doing this because it's jobs. And what JEDO is all about is economic development. Economic development whittled down is jobs. And this is just to bring more jobs to our community. So when we're considering all the external factors, I think that what we're doing through Momentum 2022, collaborating with our community, collaborating with our partners in JUMP that are helping us also with the crime reduction strategies, those things are already occurring. But this is coming to this body because it pertains to jobs. How does it help the infrastructure? Well, just yesterday, the city had a really tough decision to make. And that decision was made because we haven't had population growth. When you have population growth, you end up spreading the cost of the community a little bit better. And it doesn't impact those citizens that have the highest need as much. Finally, I will say about the benefit of bringing people from the outside. I remember back in 2005, a very young couple with 3 kids were looking to relocate to Topeka. And all that those individuals heard was how horrible of a community Topeka was. And it was said to them by Topekans, people that were not feeling the community. However, shortly after, those citizens, especially one citizen that stayed in Topeka with her kids, decided to get involved in the community and started realizing that our school districts are phenomenal. The kids right now are going to Topeka High, where they are able to have access to so many amazing things. They are in tennis, they are in theater, they are in debate, they're doing all of these things that most schools may not have in access. Sorry to the Shawnee Heights person and
Eddie Holland Park, too.
And then in addition to that, that person got so involved in the community that they started realizing that everything that was being said about the community was not correct. So much so that that person got involved and decided to run for office and is currently your mayor. Positivity typically comes when you have the influx of new people that are coming in and they're able to experience the amazing community with the people that care about people in this city. I see this as an opportunity to bring 60 new people that are going to drink the Kool-Aid and spread it out.
Madam Mayor, though.
Yes, sir.
In your 2021 budget for the city of Topeka, I encourage you to set aside $300,000 of tax dollars from the city of Topeka budget for recruitment then.
Appreciate your comments. Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Cook, $300,000 is not going to improve our school district. It's not going to lower our crime. That's simply not enough money because some of those problems are not financial issues. There's perception problems, there's infrastructure problems, none of which can be solved by $300,000. So while I respect and understand your opinion, $300,000 is just nothing to solve those problems at all whatsoever. We could throw another $300,000 at the police now, and the crime rate would be unchanged. That's simply not enough to move the needle. In this case, it is enough to move a different needle in a different way, and I would encourage you to try it.
I see Pavarnik wanting to come up to the...
And I actually, it's kind of like we're saying, all saying the same thing. I actually appreciate Commissioner Cook mentioning that if this was $300,000 for a marketing campaign, that he'd feel differently. It's what it is. It's $300,000 for a marketing campaign. The only difference is it's earned media as opposed to purchased media. So when we go out and we start marketing this, and quite frankly, the amplification of a city like Topeka instead of the state of Vermont or the city of Tulsa doing this, the amplification would be massive. And the earned media, we would probably get easily $3 to $5 million of earned media because we're willing to do something so leading edge as to invest in people that have jobs, that are willing to buy houses or sign one-year leases, and invest in them to actually help them offset their costs to move here. So I appreciate you bringing it up, because that's really all it is. Barbara mentioned Tulsa. Tulsa did a pilot of 100. They had 10,000 applicants. Guess what? 1,000 people moved there. Only 100 got the incentive. Another 900 moved. You know why? They put in the application, they learned all about that city, and they ended up moving there. They're doubling down. They're doing another 100 incentives now because the first pilot worked. They're doubling down, and they expect another 1,000 people to move there, but they're going to have to incentivize 100 of them. So it really is a marketing campaign, and it's really a multi-million-dollar earned media marketing campaign that I promise Bob Ross and his team will put out there, and we'll get a lot of marketing and attention out of it, more than we could ever buy media for $300,000. So I just wanted to make that comment.
All right. Deputy Mayor, to be followed by Councilman Padilla.
I understand both sides. I understand Commissioner Cook, because I'm right there with him. Okay, so you're going to pay somebody to move here. Number one, they don't want to be here because, and I hear the same thing you do, the crime, the schools, they don't want to come here to start with. But okay, you're going to pay me, you're going to give me all this stuff, I'll go for a year. What's to say they're going to stay if we still have the crime, if we still have all this stuff that they didn't want to come here in the first place? I mean, unless that does get better while they're here, what's going to want them to stay here? Because that's not what they didn't want to come in the first place because of the same thing.
I think the mayor touched on it. Once you get here, you realize that's not true.
That we don't have crime?
Everyone has crime. We have the same crime that other communities have. It's not, I mean, I shouldn't say this because I'll jinx myself. I've been robbed in previous communities. I've never been robbed in this community. And I've lived here 22 years. Knock on wood, but I mean, and I've lived in apartment complexes, and I've lived in homes in 3 of your districts. So it's not because I've been in a bubble anywhere, and that I'm making that too personal, but yeah, I mean, nothing says that they're gonna change, but they'll see the difference.
Councilman Padilla.
Thank you, Mayor. Since you're on crime, and it's been brought up, I'm going to use the police department as a small example of what I think Go Topeka is trying to do. Let's see, probably during contract negotiations, there was a lot of talk here that the police department could not recruit people. They just could not get enough people to come to work here in Topeka. That's all I heard. And I talked with the chief of police, who's a very forward-thinking gentleman. And he realized, because I worked in recruitment at the police department, and I know that doing the standard way and the common way of recruiting just doesn't work anymore. You have to look at new models. And he is recruiting people from out of state to come to Topeka. And the first step is they get them here. They bring them here. They've come from Mississippi and other states. They look at this town. They get a chance to know the people. And they have chosen to move their families here to Topeka to work for us and help protect us and work on crime. And so the influx of new people can help crime. The way we go about getting people here has to be different than we've been used to in the traditional way. We can't put an ad in the paper and just expect to get everything that we need. We have to look at it in an effective way. The police department is doing a great job. I like to brag about them because they are doing something that very quietly that is working for them. Given the opportunity, they could give us up to full force as our budget continues to allow. But it's the fact that they've gone outside of the box and looked at what we need. And what we need is what I think Go Topeka is trying to identify and help try to focus that recruitment effort. And the more we talk in here, it seems like we keep talking about we don't have crime, we don't have bad schools. We have good schools. We have crime, but we're addressing it. And I think we're doing it in a positive way, and I think this is a good idea. I think it's one that bears some real consideration to give a chance to see that this community can benefit from bringing in the talent. And if there are people who are already working in this city, and for companies here but not living in Topeka, it may jog them to that point to come and move into Topeka. I just can't see that there's upside by saying, no, we don't want to put ourselves out to the rest of the world as a good place to live. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Jensen, to be followed by Commissioner Mays.
So just a quick reminder, this is reimbursement for moving costs. When was the last time you all packed up everything you owned in boxes and rented a truck and drove across the country staying in hotels as you brought all your things here? That's not cheap. So yes, it may be $16,000, of which we would reimburse a company half, but remember, we're not paying for them to move out of the community. We're only reimbursing their expenses to come in. So if you come in for a year, spend $16,000 to get here with a family of 4 in a 4-bedroom house, I really find it hard to believe you're going to turn right around the next year, spend another $16,000 and move out of the community. I mean, that's the whole point of this, is it's not cheap to get people to bring their families here. So this is intended to offset the cost to help them get here.
Commissioner Mays, to be followed by Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. A statement was made earlier that this is about jobs, but it's not really about jobs. It's about people, because we have the jobs now. We've got two large employers that pay good wages that have just come up here today and said this is not about the jobs. They have jobs. They have empty jobs. They don't have people. For decades, we had several large employers in Topeka that would fill those jobs and then encourage their people to live outside of Topeka. Fortunately, those employers are gone. We have new employers that are growing, that need the workforce, and they're willing to put up their own money. See, this is not all JEDO money. This is also private funding. They're willing to put up their own money to get people to move to our community. And I welcome that. I think it's much better than them just filling their jobs. Thank you.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, as Mr. Callanan so eloquently said, I mean, this is about getting people here. You know, just to echo what Commissioner Mays just said, it's not about jobs. This is about people. This is about establishing a legacy. I think, or I'd hope we'd all agree that Topeka is a fantastic place. If not, we're all fools for living here, I guess. But Topeka and Shawnee County, sometimes we say Topeka, but it's actually, this is a county-wide thing. We know once we get people here, that they're likely to stay here, because this is a fantastic community. And, you know, you don't have to be in the city. You can be out, you know, at Seaman or Shawnee Heights or Workman Rural. Or even Topeka High, yes. Not as good as Highland Park, but an okay school.
All right.
But, you know, population is everything in communities. You spend your money where you live. You don't spend your money where you go to work during the day. You spend your money where you live. That's where you're going to have your kids in baseball, where you're going to probably do your grocery shopping, where you're going to build your house, where you're going to spend your money. It's communities that are dying are the ones that are losing population. It's not a lack of jobs, it's a lack of population that kills communities. So I'm absolutely in support of this pilot. Someone over here mentioned that this may not work. We may in a year say, you know, it didn't work. But I think it's worth a shot. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I too had mixed feelings about this when it was proposed, but something that has struck me as I've worked along, we are trying to shift our whole process, and it does happen a step at a time, but if you think about it, we talked over the last couple of years about adding measures into the incentive agreements we have with the companies that their HR departments would promote Topeka, something that we had observed was not happening before. And so we're really working on that, and the partnership is working on developing materials for them. I still hope that both the companies that have been around for a while as well as the new ones aren't waiting for those materials, because there are videos and materials that can promote all of our neighborhoods inside the city as well as countywide. That, of course, is really important to me. If I had my way, we'd say 70% of that money had to be inside the city limits. I realize that's not likely to happen. But I do appreciate a conversation that I had with Barbara that added that the dollars could be used for the home purchase, for rehab, or for the lease, because I think that adds to the message of what we have to offer. We have enough housing stock here. It's just skewed in terms of what is older and needs rehab, but might yet be much more affordable and appealing. We haven't marketed that housing stock to folks that are coming in. And when you've got a young family and a $40,000 wage, they shouldn't be in that $160,000 house. So I like the fact that that piece has been added to this offering. It should pair well with the companies that have been around for a while, as well as our newly incented companies, to market all parts of Topeka to the employees, not just those doctors that otherwise might fly in from Chicago, but that $40,000 wage person that's going to work in that warehouse and be a mid-level and rising manager to get started here. And so I see that, yes, as a marketing piece has been discussed, but also if that's a jump start to shifting how all of our companies together with our Go Topeka organization are marketing Topeka, and we're doing a better job ourselves, at least to give it a shot and see how well it works. It's nice to hear how it attracted lots and lots of people, more than just that number in the other communities. So, thanks.
Commissioner Cook?
I call the question.
Call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
The motion passes. At this point in time, we move on to item 4, the non-action items.
Okay, don't freak out when you see your agenda and think we're going to give you a 30-minute quarterly report. We're not going to do that. So let me prep.
Molly,
I do have a few
Molly,
videos.
let's give our friends an opportunity to exit the room.
Yep, let me get stuff queued up while they're leaving.
Let's take a short recess here, not to exceed 5 minutes. All right, Ms. Howie.
Okay, we have a few videos prepared for you just to recap some highlights of the year that I will send to this body and make available on the JEDO website as well, just to highlight some innovation assets that we're working on, to talk about quality of place testimonials and Washburn Tech East. So I will send those links. But I do want to just say that I think there has been a positive tone, even with all the discussion that's just been had. We all know that our feelings about this community are growing in strength, and we are our best supporter at times, and we need to remember that and keep advocating for our community. So you'll note in the quarterly report that one of the things that we measure with the Momentum 2022 scorecard is promoting a positive image, and that's the Net Promoter Score. So in 2017, we had a negative 50 score, and just since 2017 to 2018, we're now at negative 26. So getting to 0 is an amazing feat, and we have already made it made half the distance in that 1 year period. So keep up the good work talking about how great a place it is to work and live here. But I'll stand for any questions. You have the quarterly report in your hands, and the whole team would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Seeing none, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
The last item on the agenda is a public comment. Mr. Foltz?
I will pass.
Mr. Crude is not here. And Ms. Marple, do you?
I'm not going to pass.
Okay.
through that really quick. I'm all prepared. Okay. I wanted to say that I had very high hopes with the changes that were made several years ago in Topeka, but I'm sad to say that I'm disappointed. We have moved to a building that I do not think is public friendly, and it's just not me. People don't know where to go in. You know, they can't find the right room, the right floor. We're housing so many other organizations, all under the Momentum 2022. It's like an octopus. We still have the quarterly meetings, which are too long. You guys are bored. You're tired. You had a meeting last night. County commissioners have a meeting in the morning. You want to go home. You're not, you know, I can't blame you for, we need more meetings. There's still the question of public and private money. And one of the organizations in the building, which I believe is inexcusable, blatantly interfered with the last election. That's not what I want my tax dollars to go for. I wanted to say that, do you guys listen to yourselves? You know, I tried to listen about Choose Topeka. You know, I commend Go Topeka for bringing businesses to this county, city, but we do not have the workforce. But are you hearing yourselves when you say people have to work 2 jobs? Okay, now we cannot afford the necessities. A lot of people can't. The necessities are a place to live, safe places for their children to go when they're working, grocery stores nearby, transportation. You know, I want you to think about the 2 hot button topics that the city and the county have had. The city, a huge water rate increase. People cannot afford that. The county, a $10 million park on borrowed money. We need to take care of what needs to be fixed. I listened about the Choose Topeka. I could not hear. I tried to read what was online. Okay, is that going to include the person that's got the $35,000 job? You know, it should. It should. But we need, you know, moving costs, and then you talk about people that already work here. You know, we have these jobs, but most of the people do not live in our county, our city. They come in, they work our jobs, they do not pay our taxes, they do not support the businesses that are here. Let's address that. Those are the needs of the community. I'm sure everybody would like to quit working 2 jobs that does that. But we can't, as long as our taxes are so high, our utility bills are high, we're paying for stuff with borrowed money. Let's change our focus. I agree with Commissioner Cook. Choose Topeka sounds nice. Yes, we need to bring population in, but if it's the people that are going to have the high dollar jobs, they can afford to have the houses. I'll quit. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Being no other items on our agenda, this meeting is adjourned. And ice.